I want to start off with a simple thought experiment. Sitting in a room and you're working on your paper, and you suddenly have a desire to go eat ice cream, and you could be eating ice cream instead of sitting on working on this paper. And I'm already at my nearest favorite ice cream parlor, thinking about the 11 different flavors I want to try: chocolate, coffee, butterscotch, regional, whatever special favorites. And I can smell the waffle cone, and it's beautiful. I'm so glad I chose to have ice cream. I'm so glad. And to many, this thought experiment could be the fact that we have free will. It's so great. I chose to act on my desire. I was able to choose free will. But is this really free will? Am I really having free will, or am I merely a slave to my desire? Did I have free will over the thought of why I wanted to have the ice cream? And I could think about this, and I could say, hey, there's consumerism, capitalism, it's led to easy access of ice cream. There's a media development that causes me to want to eat ice cream. There's a whole biological, physiological reason. There's sugar, there's chocolate, there's emotional aspect of coping, maybe multitude of reasons. But all I'm doing is I'm trying to rationalize. I'm trying to rationalize my decision making and the bias that was there in my decision making, and that's all I'm attempting to do here, right? And what is this bias? Clearly, I'm choosing my short-term goal over my long-term goal, and maybe I didn't. Maybe you sat back and worked on your assignment, and maybe that's good. Maybe you incorporate it for delayed gratification. But do we always sit back and incorporate for delayed gratification? Is it necessary? I don't know. But we do have a bias towards choosing our immediate goals over our long-term goals. And this happens on a regular basis. And we can choose to continue to rationalize it, but it's a human nature. And it exists amongst all of us. Second, I want to talk about us, our work, everything that we do. I've worked as a data scientist. I study and work in it. And there's this whole perception of data science being this objective, truth, emergent technology. Emergence is a field where you take a lot of data and you study it and you understand things that you didn't think were possible. When there are multiple small things that come together to create something greater than itself. In arts and philosophy, it's called gestalt. So data science is expected to be a field like that. There's a lot of talk around AI, but it's a whole perception idea. We don't really understand what data science is. What is data science? It's a tool. It's a tool like any other tool that we have that we're using to optimize certain things. And because we are a species that generates a lot of data, it's a tool that tells us a lot more. And yes, that is true, but it is privy to the same nature of human nature, of cognitive dissonance, of valuing for short-term goals, like every other tool. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's important to be a tool because you're trying to improve subjective goals. Like if the Poddar school wanted to incorporate data science into their or if they already incorporated, there would be a system where you're monitoring students' development in different subjects, what they do, different fields that they're touching, their maybe books that they read, activities, see what learning works better for them, try out different types of learning, study the data, and you will optimize best learning patterns for students, best teaching patterns for teachers, because you have an optimal goal that you're going for. And it's good that you have this, because otherwise what are you trying to achieve? So, but it's also important when you know that you have this, that you know that you're trying to achieve a subjective goal, and that's all that you're trying to do with data. It's a tool for a subjective goal. So then comes the question, how do you achieve the subjective goal? And do the fact that we create the tools to create the subjective goal is hampered by our own biases? I guess so. Well, Cathy O'Neil did a research in this. She's written a book called Weapons of Math Destruction. It's a great book. They studied US news as they tried to come up with a ranking metric for universities. So what they did was, the US news team, they developed like a complex set of variables. They tried to understand different variables that could help study different universities and that could help understand ranks. They came up with 15 different variables, and it was pretty accurate, and that's really cool to come up with a set of variables that can say which schools are doing well. But all they're doing is something that I did in the ice cream parlor. I'm having 11 different flavors of ice cream and verifying the ones I like and eating the one I want to, or trying multiple ones. And this was evident in something that happened, because one variable that they did not incorporate was fees. And this tends to start questioning, why don't we consider certain variables or certain data? Like, how do you not consider fees when you're trying to rank universities? It's such a big part of the culture. It's such a big part of your value judgment from the university and your experience there. If you take a huge loan, you will be under the stress over there. It pays a huge importance. And this leads to questioning why we don't consider these variables and data sets when we are trying to create subjective goals. And this comes to my second point of human nature. First is about hyperbolic discounting. Second being the fact that something that Steven Pinker talks about as well, that we are risk averse in some sense with availability heuristic bias. What does this mean? This basically means that all I know is all I know, and that influences the way I think, and I don't want to know beyond it. There's an ignorance towards it. There's a risk to knowing more, and that's true, and that's a problem, because we tend to want to restrict our thinking onto everyone, but we don't want to be as open to understanding more. We're very limited by knowing as much as we do. We don't take risks beyond our knowledge, and that restricts us because we don't include these variables. Take an example of, say, ecological footprint or carbon footprint. Imagine if we incorporate something like this into data that we choose in decision making while purchasing devices. Like if I were to choose a phone or a camera or a laptop, I know the ecological footprint or the carbon footprint of the device and its age cycle and how much it harms the planet overall. And if organizations are responsible of including these variables, there's a whole shift of how we decide as humans. But because we chose certain subjective goals, such as, say, monetization or production or sales, we're choosing to benefit only from certain type, only to modify and manipulate data to attain certain goals. And that is how data science, regardless of being a tool, is still a subjective tool used for our benefit. And that's all it will be, sadly, unless we try to question ourselves and our systems. And we use these tools to create systems. And we've been creating systems like education, like politics. All our systems are designed as, again, non-physical tools, non-tools, but like social tools to help us function better. But these systems have the same problem. They have our own human nature affecting the way that these systems function, because they are created by us. And another problem within our systems is a sort of recursion. We tend to think in recursive patterns, and this is something Noam Chomsky talks a lot about. He talks about linguistics and language and how the primary functional use of language is to think rather than to communicate. And if you let it sit with you for a while, you'll realize why, because you're thinking it. And the most common nature of language and the beauty of it is its recursion, that we can work with this recursion to create infinite meaning. Yeah, I read this Instagram post somewhere saying every book is a recursive pattern of the dictionary. And yeah, that's all it is. We're prescribing subjective meaning to it. Our systems designed by us are privy to the same biases because they are from our thought. They created by us. They have the same recursive patterns and they have the same issues. Look at the education systems. Education systems have mostly been cash flow derived. So depending on what area requires a job to be fulfilled, you have those, depending on the skill that needs to be fulfilled for you, start studying that. You have a need to teach that in schools. When you have a need to teach that in schools, you incorporate that into curriculum. So we had a shift of industrialization and modernity, and that led to a need for a lot of engineers, and we started pushing the idea of specialized engineers and specialists for that field. And you have an entire education system within the country in the last 20 years designed with institutions only for IIT training and different engineering training to create these specialists. and when you've created the specialist, and these specialists then come out in the world as market ready engineers or specialists 10, 15 years later after the industry actually needed them. So you're creating a delay, this recursive time delay. And people who come out end up realizing there's not enough need for that specialization anymore, because, well, a lot of engineers coming out now keep talking about the fact that there's a lot more need for data scientists and healthcare workers now. And we slowly see a continual shift of this. And why is this happening? Why do we as a species not realize our recursive flaws? Like, why do we not sit back and look at our own systems that have been created by our own selves, driven by these same thoughts, these same recursive techniques, and these same biases? It's important to hold not just ourselves accountable to them, it's also important to question the systems that we generate and incorporate more feedback and keep refining and retuning it till it becomes better and incorporates for everything and in whatever way possible. And yeah, it's because for some reason we just want our systems to be exclusive. It's as simple as that. Like, you could take gender, for example. There's so much gray area of discussion. And there will still be a side that is driven by availability heuristic and will say that no, I don't understand what you're saying because I haven't experienced it subjectively firsthand, so I will disregard it. That's just human thinking. And it will change, it can change. Hopefully, all of us need to question our biases, need to question our cognitive dissonance. We all need to understand it within ourselves and within our actions, in the things that we do, in the things that we create, in the education systems that we create, in the political, in every structure, social, behavioral, communication, any structure that we create, any tool that we use. We need to try and be aware of our own biases, of our own cognitive dissonance, of our rationalizations. That's it. And that's really honestly all we can do. And accept ourselves when we fail, because I'll still choose to eat ice cream sometimes and sometimes I won't. But the times I don't, I'll be proud that I did. Yeah, that's about it. How many of you are going to go eat ice cream today after this? Do you really have free will? Or will you not eat now because I said this? You see, question yourself and think before you act, I suppose.